Hey, what's up guys? This is Dan Adams with Next Level Riding Clinics. Today I'm going to give you 5 free tips that you should do to your Polaris 850 before you even ride it. All right guys, so you just picked up your brand new 850. A lot of times the dealer is going to set up your snowmobile, but they're not you, so it's time to personalize the sled. So adjusting the handlebars, getting them parallel with the steering post, and getting your throttle, your kill switch, and your brake lever adjusted, super important. Let's get the right tools and let's make those adjustments. So guys, once you've loosened up your steering post block, it's important to just make sure that your handlebars flow nice and straight with your steering post. So a lot of times I'll get it there, I'll make sure that I'm even on either side. You can read the little hash marks on either side of the handlebars. Stand up on the sled, make it feel right. It's not too far back, too far forward, and go ahead and lock it down. All right, so now that we've got our handlebars in line with our steering post and that's feeling right, it's time to adjust both our throttle and our brake lever. And from the factory, most people, as they put their brake lever, they'll put it to the right height, but it's also about sliding it in on the handlebar. As you notice here, where my finger is, if I'm going to be an index finger guy where I'm using my brake, you can tell that I could benefit from sliding both the perk button, the reverse button, and the brake lever over to where I'm getting more into this part of the brake. And I see a lot of times clients will come up and their sleds, you got a small hand and their snowmobiles are set up probably from the factory, and they know that they've got a couple inches here where they can move that brake over. So let's move that brake over and I'll show you that adjustment. So I'm going to adjust this using a T30 Torx. And it doesn't take much. You can get this thing fairly loose like this. And then you're going to want to take a small screwdriver, and there's a tiny little screw underneath here so that I can slide the perk button over. And you'll notice how much room, and once I do this, look at this, I can put my hand back on here, and by sliding both the perk button and the brake lever over, now look where my finger is. That's going to be a lot better. The other important part of this is I'm a stand-up snowmobiler. So as I stand up, I don't want my wrist to be tweaked really hard here, so I'm actually going to lower this down some before I tighten it back up. That way I'm sort of in line with the way my brake lever sits. So instead of being way up here, I can be down here. So moving it over and adjusting it in on the handlebar will really help you get that finger, and you can tell whether I'm index or middle or both, that's going to work a lot better than where it was. So lastly guys is the throttle block. I get a lot of questions about the throttle block, whether you want to keep it loose, which I do. I don't tighten this thing down to the point where I can't move it. I like having some movement in that, but I typically like, and this is going to be different for a lot of people, but I like to have that throttle where it's nearly a flat throttle. I don't like it too far up or too far down, but there and again, I do leave it loose enough so that if I am in a position where it would benefit me to have it a little bit further down, especially if I have to do something like this, having that little bit of play in the throttle, it'll actually protect you as well. If you ever impact this thing and it's so tight to the bar, well, you can imagine what could happen. It's almost better that if you do hit it, the thing has the opportunity to move. But simply using a number 4 Allen, and there is an Allen set underneath here, and all it does is just tighten up against the handlebar. So getting it where you like it, using the Allen, and tightening it down. All right guys, now that our handlebars are adjusted properly, our throttle, our brake, and our steering post is all tightened down and ready to ride, let's jump under the hood and we're going to check belt deflection and oil level. All right guys, a lot of times from the factory, this is a brand new snowmobile, no miles on it, you can tell that the belt deflection needs to be set. The tools we're going to need are an 1/8 inch Allen as well as a 7/16 open end. You can see right here on the secondary, this is our adjuster. So you're going to simply loosen, lefty-loosey, loosen this nut and then use this Allen to either take the shivs of the secondary in or out. And in this case, we want to open the shivs so that we can tighten up our belt deflection. Belt deflection, what you want to have is about 1 inch of play as I push down between the 2 clutches. Or the Chris Brandt style that I use as well is just feeling the belt, and you can tell right now this is very loose. I'm going through this with very little resistance. I can start to snug that up to where I can still do this, and I'm still seeing that belt coming over the top of the secondary, but it hasn't dipped down in there. I want that thing to be where this takes a little bit of effort, but that's a great way to do it on the hill, just to check belt deflection as you're riding. All right guys, now that we've set our belt deflection on our brand new snowmobile, you can tell that the oil needs to be filled. Polaris puts a little bit of oil in there for transport, but obviously we got to take care of the rest from here. I recommend using the new Polaris VES Extreme oil. This oil, guys, is formulated for the demands of this new motor. Can you use it on the 800 or existing models? And the answer is absolutely. But as we move forward, I want to start this sled off in the right way using this new VES Extreme. So I like filling up the oil level, guys. We'll use this Polaris logo on the top. We try to just come straight across from there where that logo is. It's not filling it completely full, but a lot of times if you run way too low of oil, when you're hill climbing especially, you see a lot of videos out there where you can see the low oil light coming on your gauge, and I don't like doing that. So we run our oil up to about a level about right there. Like I said, not completely full, but putting enough oil in there so you've got oil throughout your day. Is this something that you have to fill regularly? And the answer is absolutely. Just like our belt deflection, you're going to be checking that regularly. All right, guys, our third free tip before you even ride your sled is stocking the belt caddy. The belt caddy is located right up front. It's got this cool wrench that's got a T40. It's a spark plug wrench, but it's also holding the belt caddy in there. Let's fill that up and let's do it before we ride. So the first items that you want to load into that are the right spark plugs. Being out there and fouling a plug, I mean, that's obviously a bad situation, but this is relatively inexpensive, and it's a horrible way to ruin your day if you've just fouled a plug and you don't have any. So we need the NGK BPR9, you can see it right there, BPR9 ESs. So we can put those right in that spot. We're also going to need a belt drive if you're a belt drive guy, and this is quick drive belt. And I know that there's belts that sort of cross over to some of this stuff. I suggest using Polaris parts, gear, and accessories for all of this stuff. But you can see this part number here is, and this is the one we want to pay attention to, the 321156 is the belt drive for this snowmobile. And then a new belt for the 850. We're going to get questions about whether the old belt, the 1183, will work with this snowmobile. This is the new, and you can see this. I really pay attention to the last four, the 1216. So this is specific to the 850. Will the 1183 get you out? And the answer is sure it would, but I would definitely recommend using the proper belt. And we'll talk about how we put the belt on in a future video. Anyway, the belt caddy itself, and I've pulled one out. This is one I've customized from last year, but you can tell what we've done here. This is a really cool idea. You go over to have, you have a spot for your spark plugs. You got your belt tucked inside. And because you're not supposed to bend or mess up your belt drive, we figured out a way that you just lap that over, still clips in the same way, so it'll hook onto that front bumper, but with a few little holes drilled. And obviously I've drilled this thing out like crazy just to make it light. Thank you, Chris Brandt. But we've zip tied that drive belt onto there, keeps it inside the motor. You don't have to, take up space in a bag somewhere, and that will clip right on. So the next free tip before you go snowmobiling is adjusting your ski stance. Now, obviously we've got these bushings here that can take our front end from a 36 to a 38-inch front end. Sitting in the center though, if we were to go spindle to spindle, you're right about that 36, a little over 36, just sitting right in the center. So you can actually take this thing and you could be a bit narrower, or you could take it and go a bit wider. Is that something that you need to do prior to your first ride? It may be something you do after your first ride. But the ski stance in itself and making sure that your toe out is set properly is real simple. With the sled sitting on the floor, you can actually just stand on the sled, make sure your handlebars are good and straight. It feels like the snowmobile is straight right in front of you, and you can just pick a center point on the snowmobile. A lot of times this takes somebody else helping you. Sight right through that very front bolt on your carbide and sight right down on this one, and then do the same thing on the back. And what you want is anywhere from an 1/8 to a 1/4 inch of toe out. So your skis in the front are actually toed out versus straight, or versus toed in. Toed in is going to make that snowmobile not work. A little bit of toe out, and that's the proper ski stance. Ready? Yep. All right guys, so the fifth and last free thing that you should do prior to riding your new Polaris 850 is making sure that your fuel setting is correct. Whether you have the standard gauge or the PID gauge, there are some steps to take so you can get your fuel either to non-ethanol or to ethanol. I recommend running the non-ethanol setting. Most of these sleds as they come are already running the ethanol setting, and I'll show you how to change it. All right guys, so we're gonna simply start the sled. You're gonna watch right after it says Polaris, non-premium ethanol. If we wanna change that to 91 non-ethanol fuel, I'm gonna push and hold the center button. It's gonna tell me options. I'm gonna go to mode, it's gonna tell me fuel type. This is gonna show non-premium ethanol again. I'm gonna hit it again. Now it's gonna say 91 non-ethanol. Simply shut down the snowmobile, and now that snowmobile is set to the 91 non-ethanol mode. That's on the standard gauge. Now I'm going to show you how to do it on the PID. All right guys, so we've got a PID gauge, and this is on an SKS with an electric start, which is why we're able to turn the key and power the gauge, and it's kind of handy. So on the PID gauge, guys, you can see what we've got to do here. This is how this will, once the sled's fired up, this is what it's showing us. So I'm going to hit here. You can see that this is scrolling up and giving me this map of what to do next. You can see that these arrow keys are here. I'm going to scroll down to system setting. I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm going to scroll down again all the way to the bottom to vehicle settings. Hit that, you'll see it right there. Nice and easy. Fuel type, I want to touch this. This is going to be the E10 ethanol fuel. If I want to go into 91 non-ethanol, I just simply scroll down and hit enter. And now I can just back out of it, and I'm back in my gauge, and you'll see it written right here in the corner. Every time you run the sled now, it'll show 91 non-ethanol. All right guys, so those are 5 free tips before you even get out and ride that new snowmobile. Hopefully that was helpful. Be sure to comment below if there's another tip that you have prior to riding. I'd love to hear about it. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.